get fully started, I want to introduce you to our Mentimeter. This is the way that we will be getting feedback from you throughout the meeting.
Julia, we're not quite live yet.
Oh, we're not? Okay, cool. Then I'll shut up. Tell me when. How will I know?
We're good now.
Okay. Let me go back. Hello, everybody. I am welcoming you to the CMS Budget Strategy Preview meeting. Before we get started, I just want to introduce you all to Mentimeter. That is how we're going to be gathering feedback from you tonight. So please do log into Mentimeter. It'll make it easier for you to see the presentation, and you'll be able to ask questions and provide feedback as we go through tonight's session. And I'm not sure if the the comments are enabled on YouTube or not, but we are not going to be able to see those. So please put any comments, feedback, and so forth in the Mentimeter. So without further ado, let me turn it over to our superintendent, Superintendent Winston.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome again. We are excited for today's session, which kicks off of our community engagement part of our budget season. And so we're actually beginning tonight with some strategy alignment because we believe, and when I say we, staff and myself, we believe that it is important to be very clear on the strategic approach to getting to the outcomes that are outlined in the new goals and guardrails that were recently approved by our Board of Education. And so the timeline from today to the actual formal presentation of a budget for the board's consideration, it will actually include some sharing of information and getting feedback from staff, all staff members, as well as you, our community members. And so that information ultimately is going to help us to inform what we will eventually share as the investment strategy is needed to get us closer to meeting those goals. And so just wanted to be able to share that. And you see, or you saw on the screen sort of what our outline for today's session will be. And so I won't go over the details, but you see them on your screen. Today's session, as we move forward, today's session is actually going to be the first of several community engagement sessions that we're going to have around the budget. And I want to state that our intention is to be able to share our proposed strategies with you, and then also answer any questions that you all may have for us. And then from there, we're going to listen to your feedback so that we can use that to help inform our approach to this important work that we're all doing in the district. And so I just wanted to kick us off by sharing that information with you. And with that, I am going to toss things back over to my colleague, Ms. Jones, to pick us up from here.
Great. Thank you, Ernest. So before we get into the specific strategies that we want to talk about, I want to share a little bit with you about how we've gotten to this point. And so there are a couple of elements in play. The first is that our board has established goals and guardrails. They have been very intentional about focusing on the outcomes for students and having those outcomes really drive our work. And to that end, they've identified goals and guardrails that we will focus on. Later in this presentation, Dr. Frank Barnes will give you an overview of what those are and how we are moving towards them. The next element of our strategic work is focus areas. The district has some work to identify what are the what are the key levers key elements that we need to deal with in order to improve student outcomes. And we've identified 5 cross-functional areas, and we'll talk more about those later on in the presentation too. But just so you know, we're combining those, we're looking at the goals and guardrails through the lens of the focus area teams in order to develop the strategy. So these focus area teams have been meeting for several months, researching, trying to figure out what the root causes are of our issues, generating solutions to those issues, and through doing that have defined the strategy that we're going to share with you tonight. We're going to take the feedback that you share with us and that others share with us in other engagement sessions, and that will help drive what our full strategy is and what our budget investments are. Okay, I just want to do a quick reminder, if you joined us late, please join us on Mentimeter. That will help, that will enable you to ask questions at any point in the presentation. It will also allow you to provide feedback as we go forward. And so with no further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Frank Barnes to share about our goals and guardrails.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. As the superintendent mentioned, starting this past summer, our board began working to review kind of what were the things they wanted to make sure that our district attended to and focused on. And it was from that work, coupled with that with an outside counselor, to be able to help work on identifying a set of 4 goals and 3 guardrails. Those 4 goals are what you see here in front of us, and they focus us on Black and Hispanic 3rd grade students, specifically increasing the percent of them who are attaining college and career readiness on the end of grade assessment, getting us up to 50% by October 2024. The students would take the assessments back in May and June, but they would become official by the State Board of Education in October. Likewise, the board asked us to focus on a 2nd goal, looking at our high school students and looking at the percent who are able to score a 4 or 5 or college career ready on Math 1 assessments, going from approximately 5% to 25% by October 2024. The 3rd goal looks at our graduates, and specifically the percent of our graduates who earn a high school endorsement. And what's specific or special about a high school endorsement is, in order to attain an endorsement, you have to obtain a certain GPA, and you have to be able to take certain classes. And there's 5 different types of endorsements. And they'd like us to increase the percentage of our students who are earning one of these state high school endorsements from approximately 61% to 75% by June 2024. And the 4th goal looks at the percentage of our schools that are making educator value-added assessment growth, meeting or exceeding growth expectations that are set by the state. And they go from approximately 72% to 95% of our schools meeting or exceeding that growth benchmark by 2024. And what our board said is that they would define the what, but they gave the superintendent the latitude to determine the how. However, they said that he could pursue these 4 goals any way that was legal, ethical, and moral, except he could not do 3 things. And by virtue, every person who reports them, all 19,000 some employees in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, could not do them either. And they were: the superintendent will not allow inequitable treatment of students. The superintendent will not deprive students of access to course offerings that are rich, diverse, and rigorous. And the superintendent will not neglect students' social, emotional health, wellness, and development. Now, as our board asked us to adhere to those guardrails, what they articulated was, they said, we'll trust you, but we're going to verify. And they set up some specific things that we would measure whether we were adhering to those 3 guardrails in pursuit of those 4 goals. The first here, which the screen has already transitioned, was inequitable treatment. And the way the board began to say, what do we mean by inequitable treatment, was they asked us to refer back to an existing board policy, policy 80A, which is the board's equity policy. And embedded within that equity policy are a number of measures, and here are 3. One was teachers teaching out of certification. Another was a substitute teacher fill rate. And the 3rd was out of school suspension disproportionality for Black students. These are 3 things pulled out of that policy that would help the board verify that we were pursuing the goals, but staying within this first of the three guardrails. The second guardrail, or second category of guardrails, advance please, access to course offerings that are rich, diverse, and rigorous. In this way, what the board was trying to communicate to us was saying that as you perhaps have to pursue strategies that might require an intensive focus on English language arts and mathematics, or perhaps intensive focus on student remediation or student supports, we want you to pursue those goals, but we do not want you to forego giving students access to the visual and performing arts, access to world languages, and our students getting access to college level courses. In the area of college level courses, they define college level courses as being advanced placement courses, international baccalaureate courses, dual enrollment courses, meaning a student taking a college course while still enrolled as a high school in CMS, and then Cambridge courses, as well as higher level career and technical education courses, also known by their acronym, CTE courses. Again, looking at 6th through 12th grade, wanting to make sure we sustain participation and increase slightly the percentage of students who are getting access to world language courses, as approximately 95% of our elementary school students already have that access. And likewise, in the visual and performing arts, where approximately 95% of our students are getting access to that in elementary school, but wanted to make sure we grew that a bit more and certainly didn't lose ground in the visual and performing arts. And then the third area of the guardrails, social emotional health, wellness, and development. And certainly this could be defined in a variety of ways. But what we have begun doing, and we begun right before the pandemic and did it right through the pandemic, is we screen our students around social emotional health and wellness twice a year using a screener from a company called Panorama. And we use that screener that Panorama does to ask a series of questions to gauge students' social emotional health from their perspective. And we give those surveys to students in grades 3 through 12. And what Panorama did is, in their research, they identified 3 areas of social emotional health and wellness that are correlated with latter academic performance. And that is a student's self-efficacy, a student's self-management, and a student's engagement. And so it's in these 3 areas that will be measured as we pursue increasing students' reporting of their own self-efficacy, students reporting of their own level of self-management, and students reporting of their own levels of engagement as we pursue these 3 goals. Thank you, and we look forward to telling you about our focus areas as we're trying to pursue these 4 goals, adhering to these 3 guardrails.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Turn this for Dr. Barnes. Okay, so let me take a moment and share our focus areas with you. One thing that's important to note, in attempting to achieve the goals laid out, the goals may be straightforward, but the approach is complex. Let's take for a moment, if you have a student who's struggling with 3rd grade literacy, it's not just one solution. So we have 5 focus areas, and several of those will impact that outcome. So focus areas, first is great teaching, and that's really looking at ensuring that students are receiving rigorous on-grade level instruction and that it's culturally responsive. We're looking at academic performance, which is making sure that students are getting the evidence-based interventions that they need, both for academic and behavioral challenges. We're looking at access to advanced coursework and the support to succeed in those courses. We are considering student engagement in learning, which is the connection between students and schools and support for social emotional health. And then finally, we're looking at staffing, making sure that our schools, our district is sufficiently staffed to create the nurturing learning environments that we need to have. And we're thinking that if we have all of these in place and they're all very strong, then we will break the link between poverty, race, and academic performance. And all of our students will be able to graduate with meaningful employment and or higher education opportunities. So we have the focus areas. What we've done with those areas is form cross-functional teams that work in these areas. And specifically, the cross-functional teams have representatives from groups that can influence, that are impacted by, or that do the work related to the focus area. Those teams are charged with going deep, like doing a deep root cause analysis to understand why our achievement levels, why our outcomes in that area the way they are, figuring out what are the best practices, how do we improve in those areas. Then they determine kind of what is our strategy to go forward. They develop budget recommendations that go with that. And then they monitor our progress as a district in those areas. If we are finding that our plans are not having the intended impact, then that team would also really drive the continuous improvement process, where they look again at root cause and at the implementation and try to figure out how to make our programs even stronger. So with that in mind, we're going to shift into the part of the presentation where we get your insights. Each of the focus area teams has developed strategies and an approach that they will share with you shortly. And once they've done their presentation, we would like for you to ask clarifying questions. We'd like you to use Mentimeter to ask clarifying questions, to share your feedback on the strengths or your concerns or your ideas for improvement. And we will keep that in mind as we move forward through this process. So just a reminder one more time, if you haven't already logged in to Mentimeter, please do that, because that is how we will collect your feedback. So I'll give you 1 minute on this page while we transition to Nancy Gladwell and our Great Teaching team.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I'm Nancy Brightwell, Chief Academic Officer, and I have the pleasure of being the champion for the Great Teaching Focus Area team. As such, our primary work is centered around the 2 goals that you see on the left-hand side of this slide, focused on 3rd grade reading improvement with our 2 target subgroups, English language learners and African American students, with goals of increasing levels of college and career readiness in those 2 specific subgroups, as well as 9th grade math and increasing the percentage of students who are scoring at levels 4 and 5 college and career ready by our October 2024 goal. Our strategies center around 4 major areas and our potential approaches. You can see on the slide next to each of our strategy focus areas. So to begin with, in terms of our curriculum, which are the resources that we use to support the teaching of the North Carolina standards, we plan to continue to expand our curriculum implementation. So over the past few years, we have provided resources for all of our kindergarten through 8th grade reading and math classes, and our Math 1 curriculum as well. We plan next year to expand implementation into our English 2 course and continue our implementation of our high school social and emotional language learning curriculum. And also, we will continue with our existing curricular areas to augment and support the resources that are currently being provided based on feedback that we get from our communities and from the teachers who are teaching with our curriculum. The second area of our strategy focuses on applying that curriculum in engaging and purposeful and affirming ways to ensure that all students receive instruction that's high quality and personally meaningful. And so with that, many of our potential approaches center around increasing instructional support in our targeted areas. So we are looking to potentially increase the number of English language learners who support instruction, particularly in our reading classes. We're looking to add potentially additional high school math coaches in targeted schools, and continue something that we began as we began to implement the middle and high school math curriculum to provide school-based support personnel to support enacting that curriculum in all of our schools. And then with regard to professional development, this would be coaching and training for math and reading teachers, our instructional leaders who support teachers outside of the classroom, and our principals, assistant principals, and deans who lead that work. We're looking to go deep with some targeted areas of professional development, including an instructional leadership summer conference for all of those who are leading this work across our 180 plus schools. We're looking to begin to look at that Math 1 goal by tracing all the way back to looking at some key elements that we feel like we can improve on, starting with 5th grade math with some summer institute planning. So we will continue with our ongoing middle school math and Math 1 professional development, as well as providing for our Math 1 teachers Desmos training, which provides online tools and resources for our math students, as well as supporting our teacher leader pathway. And last but certainly not least, as Ms. Jones mentioned, it's important in our continuous improvement efforts that we're looking at ways that we can monitor effectiveness. So some potential approaches that we have looked at are designing a targeted data dashboard aligned specifically to the goals that I've mentioned to you, as well as implementing monthly school instructional leadership teams where we bring small cadres from each school to really dig deep around the planning and the using of data to continue and improve the quality of the learning experience for students, especially targeting our 3rd grade reading and our Math 1 goals. So with this, that concludes my summary of our strategies for great teaching currently. And I believe we will offer an opportunity for anyone to enter some questions in Mentimeter.
Thank you, Nancy. We invite you all to consider answering questions in Mentimeter. We would really like to know your feedback about our approach, and we have a few sub-questions. What do you see as the strengths of our approach? What concerns do you have, and how might we strengthen that approach? So if you go into Mentimeter, you should be able to scroll, and you'll see a place that you can enter the information. So we will give you a couple of minutes to think about your responses to what you've heard so far. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next team. That is our academic performance team, and I'm going to hand things back to Dr. Frank Barnes.
Good evening again. When we think about academic performance, there's many things that can contribute to academic performance. What we're referring to in this particular area is that we contend, or we assert, that every student, as heard in the great teaching area, needs to have experienced great teaching in every classroom every day. That's what we need to provide. But we need to supplement that, we assert, with some students needing more and different, needing extra help to get the basics, to be able to continue their academic progress and to ensure their academic success. So with that, we're trying to build out the system we need to make sure that in every school there are practices and processes that can ensure that students can get the help they need as soon as we know they need it. We want to focus this on providing 4 different things as part of this particular strategy, making sure that we have the access to information to ensure that happens and to make sure it happens, to provide students with the actual tools and resources, or I should say staff with the tools and resources they need to provide students with the learning opportunities they need, to have the appropriate levels of oversight to make sure that's happening from school to school, and to make sure that we're reviewing our policies, our regulations, and our general practices to help make that happen. So the specific investments we want to make sure that we make is one that we've already begun to go forward with, and that's to have a system, a platform that would help us to know whether our students need a particular type of an intervention or not, and if they're receiving that intervention in a timely fashion. We've been having the benefit of being able to use a state system, but after multiple years of working with our state, we found that it just can't meet the needs of our district or the expectations of our community. So that's one investment we're going to make. As far as the tools and resources or support that our teachers and administrators need, we're going to continue to make sure that we screen all of our students 2 to 3 times a year in grades K through 8 in English language arts and mathematics, just to make sure that on top of what their course grades are, do they have those foundational skills? And if if not, which foundational skills are they missing? And likewise, which foundational skills do they have that we can build upon? We've been making multi-year investments in that K through 8 space, but we need to provide that same type of support in high schools, coupled with assessments that give us even finer grained detail on what students who might be struggling, say in Math 1 in high school, are struggling with that we can build on and expand upon. Some of the feedback we've gotten from our principals is as committed as they are, and indeed they are, to this work, they need additional boots on the ground assistance to make sure that the process is happening as it should at the school. So we want to be able to provide a number of MTSS facilitator positions across not all of our schools, unfortunately, because we can't afford that necessarily, but in a targeted set of schools, providing them where the need is the greatest. And likewise, we want to couple that kind of administrative support at the school with the number of people we call interventionists, people providing direct supports to students in English language arts or mathematics to get kids the exact help they need on top of what teachers will provide them daily. And it's important for us to remind ourselves and to communicate to you that these type of extra help supports are a supplement in addition to their coursework, not in place of it. Also, oversight. Right now, we have a great group of people in central office who are doing this work, but there's no one person dedicated to this work in central office to make sure it's happening, who goes to sleep thinking about it and wakes up thinking about how to make it better for our community and for your students. So we want to be able to hire a director to be able to be clear about what are the expectations that we have of schools and to support them in the ways that they can deliver on those expectations that we make. And I've said earlier, we want to make sure that we look at the rules that will determine who gets an intervention. So it doesn't matter what school you go to, but no matter which 180 schools in our district that you go to, that if you've seen that you need help to prevent your academic failure, that you're getting that help. And it wouldn't matter how great the need or how small the need be at your particular school, to have a true system-wide experience, as well as to look at regulations. So look at regulations and to make those decisions around rules. Those don't cost any money, but they cost our time, they cost our effort, and they cost our attention. And we want to spend all three of those, in that certain way. That's what we mean in this particular budget around academic performance. And I believe you'll have an opportunity to give some feedback, share your thoughts, and make suggestions.
Thanks, Frank. This is your opportunity now to share your feedback on academic performance. Again, we are very interested in your perspective about the strengths of the approach. We want to know about any concerns you have about the approach and also your thoughts on how we might strengthen it. So we'll give you a minute to make any comments and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay. We will now move on to our next focus area, which is advanced coursework. And I'd like to welcome Lakeisha Craven-Howell.
Thank you, Julia. My name is Lakeisha Craven-Howell, and I lead the district's Office of Student Assignment and School Choice. And I'm excited to co-champion our advanced coursework focus area with Condra Ratley, who is the Chief of School Performance. You can see to the left our goals for increasing the percentage of graduates who earn a state high school endorsement, as well as some of the guardrails listed around increasing success in college level courses, as well as participation rates in world language and visual and performing arts courses. We believe that if students are aware of all of the opportunities available to them to take college level courses, if they are known by an adult who can identify them and encourage them to take these courses, if students have broad access to these courses, both at their assigned home schools, as well as through a variety of specialized magnet programs, and if students have the support, both in courses that lead up to college level courses, as well as during college level courses, that we will be able to achieve these goals. As we think about our approach to the different components of this strategy, we want to build student awareness by ensuring we have a very student-centered multimedia campaign that makes students aware not only of the opportunities that are available to them, but how those opportunities align to their post-secondary goals. We want to build on the work of our Equal Opportunity Schools work, which you sometimes hear referred to as EOS and Access 2024, which has helped us to establish a baseline of advanced placement courses available in each of our high schools, as well as increased participation and success in those courses among historically underrepresented groups. When we think about our approaches to increasing the range of students who are identified, we want to systemize college and career readiness support by providing schools access to college and career coaches. We know that our counselors are overtaxed, and at the school level, we need additional support. Students to have access to individuals who can provide advisement and guidance as it relates to their post-secondary goals and navigating high school to prepare them for success in those goals. We also want to implement structures which promote stronger student-adult relationships in schools, things like advisory periods and organizing schools into smaller learning communities. As we think about our approach to increasing access for students, certainly we want to strengthen all of our existing programs, including International Baccalaureate, Advanced Placement, Career and Technical Education. We also want to expand on our middle and early college options for students. Finally, as we think about support, we think it's very important that students have an opportunity to explore their college and career goals, to track those in a system where they can monitor their progress towards those goals, and they can share that progress with a trusted adult at the school. So we want to invest in an online system for students to do exactly that. We also want to ensure that there are structures in school that ensure both time during class as well as out of class time when students are available and can receive support. That might mean peer-to-peer tutoring, adult-to-student tutoring during the school day and after school. But we want to make sure that those structures are there both during the school day as well as after school so that students can access the support that they need.
Thank you, Keisha. At this point, we'd really like to get your feedback on the advanced coursework approach. And I just want to remind you, you can provide your feedback in Mentimeter. You can see at the top of the page here, it says you can go to www.menti.com and enter this code in order to access and be able to provide feedback. And specifically, we'd like your feedback on the advanced coursework strategy. We want to know, what do you see as the strengths of this approach? What concerns do you have about it? And what do you think we could do that would strengthen our work in this area? So I'll give you a minute here to gather your thoughts and share your feedback, and then we will move on to the next focus area. Okay. Now we're going to move to our student engagement for learning focus area, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Katrine Penn.
Good evening. My name is Katrine Penn. I'm the Executive Director of Student Wellness and Academic Support, and I am one of the co-leads of the Student Engagement Focus Area team. The guardrails that are served and addressed by the Student Engagement team are those related to out-of-school suspension disproportionality, as well as the 3 social and emotional learning and social emotional support guardrails that Dr. Frank Barnes referenced earlier in this session. And again, those 3 guardrails, or those 3 SEL related areas, are those that are most closely related to student course performance as well as student attendance. We have selected 4 primary strategies in an attempt to address the concerns related to these areas. The first strategy is focused on high interest activity and increasing opportunities for students to engage in extracurricular and co-curricular activities at their school, both during the school day as well as after school hours. Our objective is to increase opportunities for student connections. We know from research that it's important to create ways for students to experience school differently, as well as opportunities for students to experience themselves differently in relationship to school. One of the critical components of this strategy is that we have to give student voice to their activities that are adopted at particular schools. If it's to be successful, the activities have to be things that students are interested in or would find appealing. This we know is an important factor for engagement as well as supporting student behavior. Our proposal is that these activities first be targeted to schools who do have high rates of suspension or low attendance rates, and we believe it will be important to incentivize school staff to lead these extracurricular activities, as well as provide transportation home from after-school activities so that students who may not have their own transportation or whose families can't transport can still participate. Another major strategy is around strengthening our social and emotional learning implementation. The initial district-wide rollout of SEL occurred during remote learning. And so while we grew the number of students and schools who were involved in the work, we did not grow or strengthen our capacity to support the work. Teachers and schools need a lot more support in getting to a point of high quality implementation than what we're actually able to provide at this point in time. It's also important to note that SEL is a critical part of our MTSS framework. We have to properly support students with social and emotional skill development, as well as the application of those skills, and prevent behavioral, emotional, and attendance challenges. The next piece of the work is focused on expanding the Intervention Center ISS model. Currently, CMS is piloting the Intervention Center model at 5 middle schools and 5 high schools. And that's a model that serves to keep students in school, even in the face of significant disciplinary challenges. And knowing that we are currently experiencing increased incidents in the midst of ongoing staffing challenges, it can be difficult for students to maintain the needs of students at school, which could result in out-of-school suspensions. So the intervention centers allow schools to provide real-time intervention in proximity to the incident and allow students to receive access to instruction and support instead of out-of-school suspension. Finally, the last piece of the focus or the strategy for this particular area is on professional development. The issues that we're tackling in this particular focus area are either new, like social and emotional learning, or they're enduring, like out-of-school suspension disproportionality. We need to raise the knowledge and skills of our staff at the school and district level in order to more effectively meet student needs in these particular areas.
Thank you, Katrine. Let's give people an opportunity to share their feedback and thoughts on this one. So again, please log into Mentimeter if you would like to share your feedback. And in particular, we want to understand from you, what do you see as the strengths of this approach? What concerns do you have about the approach, and how might we strengthen our approach? So we'll give you a minute to share your thoughts, and then we're going to move on to the final focus area. Okay, well, let's move on to our final focus area. We're going to discuss staffing, and Laura Francisco, please take it away.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Good evening. I'm Laura Francisco. I'm Associate Superintendent of Human Resources, and our staffing focus area really relates to ensuring that our classrooms are staffed by high quality and certified staff. And we have two strategies to that end. One focused on the recruitment and retention of certified teachers, and another focused on classroom support to strengthen the support when the regular certified staff is unavailable, absent, or unassigned. We have a combination in our potential approach of some strategies that we're already working with, they're already in place, and then some ones that we want to pursue. So in terms of recruitment of retention of certified teachers, one area that we're looking at is increasing the local teacher supplement. Of course, this would have to be done in conjunction with our county funding partners. We have a workforce development pipeline in the works with UNCC that would allow us to build in 50 teachers per year. So a total of 150 teachers for a 3-year program. We are proposing to develop a praxis and licensure online study prep, where we would develop 10 courses for our newest teachers to do online study prep to help them pass these exams earlier in their tenure with us. We're looking at critical shortage pay for 3 critical shortage areas, those being EC teachers and secondary math and science teachers. And this would be pay that would be in addition to regular teacher pay for these particular areas where we have a lot of trouble getting certified teachers. And then our ongoing investments in this strategy include our employee retention incentives that everyone is receiving, our EC elementary ed teacher residency cohort, where we're really growing our own teachers from within the ranks of CMS, our recruitment incentives that were targeted to EC teachers, increasing the number of contracts for our international teachers who come to us with a lot of experience, particularly in secondary math, science, EC, and elementary grades, increasing our TFA placements from 60 to 80, and then a live virtual instruction pilot, which is an initiative where there's a classroom manager on site to work with the students in person and a certified teacher remotely teaching in from another location. In terms of the classroom support strategy, we're looking at leveraging a vendor to fill our TA vacancies, our teacher assistant vacancies at our Title I schools. Focusing on this, thinking that if we can fill our teacher assistant vacancies and they're filled regularly, it's not as much of an issue if we don't have a sub in a certain day, although building our sub fill rates is definitely one of our strategies. And to that end, we're going to continue our guest teacher program, where we have at this point over 300 guest teachers that have been hired and are out working in our schools. We increased our daily sub rates. We have developed incentives for substitutes who work 5 or more or 10 or more assignments in 1 month. And then we also have some partnerships with external organizations to help us build that recruiting and keep our pipelines filled for substitute teachers.
Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing about the staffing area. Now I'd like to invite those of you who are watching the video to share your feedback on the staffing area. And in particular, we want to know, what do you see as the strengths of this approach? What concerns do you have about the approach? And how might we strengthen this approach? And you can share your feedback on Mentimeter. So just go to www.menti.com and enter the code 32741951. And you can just review the elements if that would be helpful to you. And we will give you a minute and then we will close out today's session. Great. So at this point, I'm going to turn things back over to Superintendent Winston.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And I want to thank all of our audience members for participating in tonight's community engagement session. I do want to let you know that because we want to make sure that you have ample opportunity to share your feedback about the focus areas that staff has shared this evening, we're going to leave the Mentimeter link open for another few days so that you can watch the video from tonight's session and provide your feedback should you choose to. And I would strongly encourage you to do so. We will be sharing the video and the Mentimeter link using all of our communications channel as quickly as possible. So if you'll be on the lookout for that, you should be seeing or hearing something about that in the very near future. As a next step in our budget process, the Board of Education will have a budget work session at its next regularly scheduled meeting, which will take place on March the 8th. That is next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center. I want to close by saying thank you. Thank you to our staff. I want to thank members of our community for taking time out of your schedules to join us this evening. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.